Good evening. Hello, everybody. Okay, good evening. I'm Councillor Joe Higson, Chairman of Climate Transition Corporate and Environmental Services Policy Advisory Committee. I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording proceedings? I ask this so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. So, item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies? Councillor Millen.
Hi there, there's apologies for Councillor Cooch.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Callan?
Apologies from Councillor Stang, forecast.
Okay, thank you. So item 2, are there any Oh, sorry.
Apologies from Councillor Summersgill, he's on holiday.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, any substitute members? So, Councillor Millen for Councillor.
Yes, substituting for Councillor Cooch.
Yeah. Okay, item 3, urgent items. There are actually a couple of urgent items that have come up in the last couple of hours. So the first one is that I intend to withdraw item 10. So that's the Council's expression of support for the Sunshine Bill and the Climate and Nature Bill. So one of the bills has been pulled and the other one has faced a setback, so neither are making their way through the Commons at the moment, and that won't be happening until July at the earliest. So both are going to be withdrawn and redrafted in terms of the letter. Okay. I also intend to take item 12, medium-term financial strategy 2025-26 to 2029-30, and Appendix F as an urgent update, as it includes an updated recommendation. Okay, the information's only arisen today. Did members want some time to read the update before considering it? No. No. Okay. Thank you very much. Item 12 then. We got to run through. Oh, sorry. Are there any visiting members? There's none that I can see. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? No. I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Thank you. So are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? No? Okay, so I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of January 2025 be approved and as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Okay, so item 9, forward plan. Are there any comments on the forward plan, or do Cabinet members wish to make any comments? Okay, so I move that the forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? Thank you. So item 10 is withdrawn, and then we move on to... Okay, then we move on to item 11. So the Housing Benefits War Pensions Policy. This is going to be introduced by Councillor Cox, Cabinet Member for Corporate Services.
Thank you. Pardon me. Thank you, Chair. I'll introduce and then I'll ask Officer Zoe Kent if she can go through any further detail, if that's okay. So since the late 1980s, councils have been able to put in place a policy to disregard up to 100% of war disablement pensions and war widows pensions. The council approved this disregard at the time, back in the 80s, and it's been in place ever since then. I just wanted to pause in terms of the phrase disregard. What that means in this context is any income received by the individual from that pension isn't taken into account in the calculations of their housing benefit or any other sort of like allowances towards other benefits. So they get to retain that amount rather than it being offset against something else. As part of the auditing process of housing benefit subsidy claims, the Department for Work and Pensions requires evidence that this policy was approved by members at the time. Records from this time are still kept in paper format, and it hasn't been possible to locate the evidence as such. So this policy has therefore been written, giving details of all war pensions that are covered by the scheme. This can be found in Part 3 of Appendix 1, Housing Benefits War Pension Policy. Ex-service people who have served for our country can often suffer with physical and mental health problems, and this is a way of us supporting them. The total cost of this disregard of war pensions in 2024/25 was 27,266, 70% of which of that cost is met by DWP, and the remaining 25% is met by Maidstone Borough Council, so that's £6,524 for the year. What I just wanted to say as well about this policy, I asked Zoe to confirm that we haven't used this as an opportunity to update any of our procedures or practices or process. This is literally written as the practice exists today, without any changes. Thank you.
Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Chairman. That's really reassuring. I don't know if you remember I brought this up at Overview and Scrutiny, and it's nice to just know that, and it sounds like a very, very good thing to be updating.
Thank you. Councillor Conyard.
Given that, may I move as per the papers?
Thank you. So the recommendation is that the Housing Benefits War Pensions Policy is adopted. Is that agreed? Thank you. So moving on to item 12, which is the medium-term financial strategy 2025-26 to 29-30. This is also going to be introduced by Councillor Cox, Cabinet Member for Corporate Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I recognise for a number of you this is, you've seen this on more than one occasion, so I'll try not to make it too repetitive. So we'll have Mark Green here to support with any questions if we get into the details. So this report and the related reports to Cabinet, they're meeting on the 5th of February, and to Council on the 19th of February, represent the final stage in setting a budget for the next year. Most of the work on the new corporate strategy and the medium-term financial strategy and the budget was completed before the government published its devolution white paper just before Christmas. And as such, the proposals in this report do not take account of devolution and local government reorganisation proposals. We've taken the view, and actually this is supported by officers, that we've just got to keep going, right? We've got to keep calm and carry on. So that's the premise we have here. These proposals do not in any case affect the requirement for the Council to set a budget for 25-26. So Cabinet will, however, be considering the implications of the government's proposals and subsequent developments once a budget has been set for the next year. In-year budget amendments will be brought forward for member consideration. So at this point, I just wanted to mention two things. So first of all, it's worth bearing in mind that as yet we don't have the final settlement for local authorities. That's still at proposal stage by government. And once it's confirmed, it may affect the national insurance contribution costs from the employer perspective. But Mark, as you'd expect, has a plan for that, which I'll let him go into in a while, should the final settlement not meet all of our costs. So the report provides details of feedback on the budget proposals from the PACs. There was only one substantive change proposed, which was to bring forward replacement of the Moat Park Leisure Centre. The Cabinet is not minded to accept that proposal in light of, firstly, a contract extension was agreed in 2024 with the Maidstone Leisure Trust and Serco, and that allows for capital improvements to take place at the leisure centre over the next 5 years. Secondly, this will ensure that the centre remains fit for purpose and in addition gets enhancements to its facilities in the next 5 years. But it is, thirdly, also recognised that the longer term leisure facilities will need to be renewed or replaced, and the capital programme does contain provision for the necessary initial work to take place, with 2.95 million budgeted between 2027 and 2030. Updates to the budget proposals are set out in the report. The net impact of these and of savings and growth proposals is that there is a balanced budget position for 25-26. It should, however, be recognised that budget gaps are projected for subsequent years. Appendices to the report show budget savings and growth proposals in Appendix A, and these are unchanged from those previously reported here. Overall revenue projections, Appendix B. Detailed budgets as known as the budget book in Appendix C. The capital programme, Appendix D. The Treasury Management Strategy and related strategies, Appendix E. And then details of reserves in Appendix F, to which you have an urgent update here. I'll let Mark talk about what that urgent update is. I was just wondering whether to interject, but no, you'll be fed up of hearing me. And then finally, updated medium-term financial strategy as Appendix G. The recommendations are set out on pages 36 to 37, and I'll quickly summarise those. Hang on a second. Just wondering whether to save Chair a job or to do it here. So, yeah, I'll quickly run through them. The recommendations set out on pages 36, 37 are those that the Council will be asked to approve when setting a budget for the next year. Key recommendations are as follows. £500,000 of unring-fenced government grant to be transferred to the Nature Recovery Fund. The remaining unring-fenced government grant of £3.6 million to be transferred to the Housing Investment Fund to subsidise the Council's Quality Housing for Life programme. There will be an urgent update on this bullet as well, which I'll ask Mark Green to go over with you. Increase of £8.37 in Band D council tax, which is equivalent to 3%, and that is the referendum limit set by government. Approval of detailed estimates, the budget book. And finally, change in the minimum revenue position, MRP policy, to align the accounting treatment for repayment of borrowing with the annuity basis used when repaying the Council's £80 million of loans from Aviva. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, if I can just pick up on the late addition to the agenda. Although, as Councillor Cox has explained, more work needs to be done on what devolution and local government reorganisation will mean, it's become clear that there's work needed almost immediately on preparing proposals for government, on providing the kind of analyses that we need to present as part of any business cases to government. So the late change to these papers is that there's a proposal to take 100,000 from that unring-fenced government grant and put it into an earmarked reserve for work on local government reorganisation. At this stage, we don't know how much will be needed, and if it's more than the 100,000, obviously the Cabinet would come back to members and report what's needed and request further funding. But we thought it was appropriate to put down a marker so that people were aware that the Council will need to spend some money to basically get the best deal for this area in the discussions that are starting to take place about local government reorganisation. Thank you.
Can I just ask, is there any other money available from government specifically for the devolution preparation?
We're not aware of any grants at the moment. It's possible that there may be grant funding, and clearly if there is, then we'll maximise use of that funding, but there hasn't been any specific announcements yet from government.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from... Okay, Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the allocation of money, do we know yet whether there's going to be officer resource allocated as well, sort of where that is? And then also, I understand that we've started promoting the parking changes, and that consult the members of the public can feedback by, is it the 17th of February or around then? I've said in previous committees I don't agree with the parking changes in this budget, so I won't be voting in favour of it this evening. But on that point, I think, I mean, it doesn't seem like much time, and why are we not consulting after the decision's been made on parking, if that makes sense?
Yes, on the first question, Councillor Cannon, absolutely, there will be staff resources needed. Where the cost comes in is if a member of staff ends up spending 50% of their time working on devolution, then we would have to backfill them, and that's where the cost comes in. I mean, that's an example of the kind of thing that 100,000 might be spent on. And in relation to your second question, we've had to start the consultation process on the assumption that council will agree the increase in parking fees, because it takes time, or we have to allow sufficient time, given that we want to be able to introduce the parking fees at the beginning of the new financial year. But that is still subject to council agreeing on 19th of February, and we could always withdraw the plan for increases in fees if council were to decide to vote against that proposal.
Thank you. Would you like, Councillor Jones?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to mention about staffing, so I'm glad that you covered that. My only point really is 100,000 seems quite an optimistic level. I mean, I would have thought that we probably would need far more than that. But I think 100,000 is a good start, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Are there any other? Okay, Councillor Millam.
Thank you, Chair. I know you did cover off about the Moat Park Leisure Centre, the points where they've raised at the PAC about bringing forward the replacement of Moat Park Leisure, and I understand the points you put forward of why that's not possible. But can we have any assurances that we are doing all we can to get something in place to make sure that that does happen, despite what's going to happen with the devolution?
Sure. So up until now, there have been some improvements taking place at the Leisure Centre in its current form. And Mr. Green will testify every week. I almost have like a broken record conversation where I'm asking, what else can we do? What else can we do? Can we make the space we're heating smaller to try and, to reduce emissions, etc.? But the fact, from my point of view, when I first joined this council and heard the sums that were being floated around that the replacement of the leisure centre would cost, they're eye-watering. I struggle to think of any other project in our remit that would cost that much. Having said that, it will have a lifespan. Everything does, and we're sort of conscious that is coming up, and there'll become a point where it's not economical in its current form. So the money that's in the budget for 2027 to 2030 is for a full and proper study of actually what the possibilities are, and to come back to the council with an informed model that we can all look at. Thank you.
Councillor English.
Just an observation. There's a sort of impression that nothing much has happened, but of course that the improvement works, albeit be it sort of very short to medium term, have actually been quite well received. I don't know whether councillors are aware that the that the swim bars, the new features, have actually won a national award from the relevant trade association a few months ago. So it is a sort of issue of taking things in the relevant stages. Looking forward, I think one of the things we'll have to consider is not just replacing the current leisure centre, but looking at a number of issues. For example, I'm not giving a commitment, I'm just saying, flagging this up as an issue. It's become obvious that a number of sporting clubs have a real issue because there is no Olympic-sized pool anywhere within Kent or any distance easily travelled of Kent. So what I would say is that this is not just a question of replacing the existing facility like for like, but actually looking as if we are going to spend this sort of money, and we probably are, getting something that is unique, special, better than, and also more efficient to run. So, which is an important thing. So there's no lack of ambition, but a realisation that we made a deal with Serco, we have to honour that deal in the short term, and getting to where we really want to be will take some considerable effort, but there's no lack of commitment to actually getting there in the end.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to that. I'm absolutely a fan of swimming pools. My dad was a swimmer. He swam for the country, swam for the Navy, etc. And he was sort of like somebody who was a joy to watch. And it's really interesting when you look at other installations. The one that springs to my mind is Lichfield, where they installed a new swimming pool, and it's not the big vertical box that we have. It's actually sort of much more sort of like horizontal. And so, you know, maybe it's just a question of having these facilities all in one place. Actually is no longer, I'm not an expert on this, but no longer the way, and you actually sort of break it up and make it more modular. But yeah, when it comes to the vote on getting an Olympic-sized swimming pool, I'm going to be number one in the queue. So thank you.
Councillor Cannon.
Just on that, if we want to sort of preempt the next unitary authority, sort of effectively, I don't know, get shovels in the ground so they carry on the work of this authority, when would a decision, what sort of, should we actually be putting it back in now because of the timeline? Or because if we put it back too far away, then we're going to be in a situation where that's not actually going to happen because a new authority centred it wherever it's centred, maybe in Maidstone, might not prioritise a leisure centre in Maidstone. So I'm just wondering about thoughts on that.
My view is I think the leisure centre is going to drive the timetable, because when it gets towards end of life and uneconomical, regardless of who's looking at it, it will still be towards end of life and uneconomical. So I think it will become a very natural and obvious business decision that it makes sense to do it, and whatever that investment is. For me, the investigation between now and that decision is, are there other models such as the Lichfield model? You know, actually, is the number 60 or is it 20? And I think, you know, the more that we can push to get that expedited, so we've got our arms around actually what the proposition is, the better.
Thank you. Any further comments from the committee? Okay, so the recommendations are pages 36 to, there's a lot of them, 36 to 37, 12 in total, but there is a slight amendment then to number 3. So number 3, where it has the £500,000 unring fence transferred to the Nature Recovery Fund, the amendment is that 100,000 of that be transferred to a government devolution fund. Committee, do we agree with the recommendations on pages 36 to 37 with that amendment? You don't agree? Okay, right. So we're going to go through them one at once. Okay, which area is it that you don't agree with? On the substantive and then the amendments. Okay. Oh, okay, yeah. Fine.
If you wanted to, you could just ask everyone.
Just ask
to
for a
do-
vote on that.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have a vote then on accepting the recommendations. So all those in favour? Accepting. And against? Okay, thank you. I think that's it, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That's the last item on the agenda. So I now declare the meeting closed.